This is part 2, chapter 11. What is that? Going to the dark side. Not my favorite part of the story, but it happened. So, here we are. Yeah. Phil also began claiming that he had obtained an original 16mm copy of Manos and would restore it in partnership with Riff Tracks. At the same time, he told me that Bernie Rosenblum, the original photographer on Manos, had the copy that he wanted and that he, Phil, was working on a deal to obtain it. Whether that was true or not became a moot point when, in November 2011, Bernie had a stroke. After he got the news, Phil called Bernie's wife Kay and said, "Well, too bad about Bernie. Guess he can't be in our movie now." Phil called me right after saying, "I guess I could have been a little more tactful. I think she's mad at me." Kay was actually so upset that she refused to speak to him again. His next step took him to Riff Tracks to see if he could work a deal with them to get the copy and restore it, in partnership with them footing the bill. During all this, I heard about Ben Solovey, a young filmmaker and 16mm aficionado in Los Angeles, who had found the original Manos work print in an eBay auction. I naively told Phil that he should connect with Ben and that maybe they could help each other since they both had the same idea of restoring the film. Phil took the information and posted on his website that he was already doing a restoration of his own. And when Phil realized that Ben had raised more than $45,000 in less than 3 months on Kickstarter for his restoration, he finally contacted Ben. At first friendly, he began to threaten, claiming he had found the copyright and that Ben had better team up with him and give him the rights, or he would take it by force with endorsement of the director's estate. Ugliness ensued as Phil began attempting to discredit Ben, publicly describing him as a creepy kid, while telling everyone that he had the best attorneys in Hollywood working pro bono for him and that they agreed that his found copyright was valid. Phil also began claiming that he was representing Dad and me, so that no one, including Riff Tracks, would attempt to contact either of us directly. When I confronted him on this fantasy, he became furious, saying that we were supposed to be a team and that if I didn't want to be part of the family, I wouldn't get to share in the future bounty and could merely be an actress in his film. He also expressly forbade me to communicate with Ben Solovey, at which I rolled my eyes from my end of the phone line. Ben continued with his project and by 2012 was beginning to show the restoration at a few screenings while shopping for a distributor. Ben asked if I would like to attend as a special guest at some of the screenings and that he would help make the connections for me. As anxious as I was to distance myself from Phil and Joe, I felt obligated to all the other victims in this pitiful charade who had already dedicated so much time, hope, and energy to seeing the sequel done. Unable to allow the manipulation to continue, I challenged Phil again, saying that I was still willing to finish his movie while reminding him that we had no legal agreement for him to represent Dad and myself or to speak on our behalf. He was incensed, telling me that I had betrayed the family by associating with Ben and his restoration project. He said that if I didn't go along with him, he would just go find another little Debbie for the role. Of course, the whole idea of the movie's appeal was to have all the original living cast members. Debbie was a lead role and we had already shot about a fifth of the film. My response was the most satisfaction I would ever get, so I enjoyed it. There is only one Debbie, and that's me. So good luck with that. And that was the end of it, or so I thought. I'd already been contacted by the El Paso Film Festival about making an appearance with Ben on August 5th, 2012, to talk about my role in the original Manos. They would be showing Ben's restoration, and I knew that Phil would have a fit about it. So I didn't tell him, knowing that if I gave him an opportunity, he would attempt to sabotage it. Ben took the high road, deciding he would tell Phil and get it over with several weeks before the show in hopes of avoiding a last minute problem. Phil immediately demanded a $10,000 licensing fee from Ben to proceed. Ben refused since his intellectual property lawyer, Ian Friedman, had already researched the copyright and found that it was an application for copyright of the script, not for the film itself. The film had been in public domain since it was made and nothing had changed. The copyright stamp would have to be on the actual film to be valid. As I arrived at the airport on Friday, August 4th, to board the plane for El Paso, the artistic director of the El Paso Film Festival, Charles Horak, called me. They had just received a call from Phil, relaying a message from his lawyers, insisting the show be canceled because it would be illegal to proceed. The festival was in full swing and there was no time to investigate, especially since the call from Phil had come late on a Friday afternoon. The festival is a nonprofit owned by the city of El Paso. Although they weren't ready to agree to the claims, the board of directors felt that they couldn't take any chances and were not going to spend any money on an attorney to find out, so they canceled Manos from the lineup. Later on Friday evening, Phil again contacted Charles Horak, saying they shouldn't cancel and that something could be worked out. He then gave his conditions. He wanted the $10,000 licensing fee and for Ben to be banned from the festival with his photo distributed to security personnel so that they could ensure that he didn't sneak in to any of the films in the entire festival. I was instructed to call Phil and his lawyers to receive a statement to read promoting the sequel. Lastly, the film festival had to get Joe Warren there from the East Coast by the next evening to join me on stage to talk about his dad's film. In other words, the entire 20 minutes I was scheduled for Q&A about being an original actor in the 1966 film would be commandeered by Joe Warren, who hadn't even been born at the time, and Phil's plug for the Manos sequel. Charles met with Ben and me to discuss this glitch. He said that although he did not know me, he was not willing to prostitute me for the sake of screening the film, even though the festival had gone to some expense to get us there. He responded to Phil's outrageous demands on the basis that the film's screening had already been canceled, and that was that. They hadn't had to pay even close to $10,000 for any of the other famous films on their week-long 40 film festival program. But Charles had another plan up his sleeve. Late Saturday afternoon, he made plans to have Manos screened at 9 p.m. that night in the ballroom of the El Camino Hotel where we were staying, directly across the street from the Plaza Theater. A large screen Blu-ray system and 300 chairs were hastily set up. A bar was rolled in and a bartender hired to sell cocktails to the crowd to enjoy while watching the movie. Ticket holders were refunded their money at the door of the Plaza Theater and directed to walk across the street to the hotel for a free showing of Manos. It was my first appearance at a screening, and I was so excited to attend. The Capri Theater where the original film had... Wait, I just lost my... Because because I was so excited. Oh, and I was so excited to attend. The Capri Theater, where the original premiere of Manos had screened, had since been demolished, but the hotel ballroom was very nearly on the same geographical location on which I had stood as a 7-year old in 1966. It was magic. The audience was fabulous and kept Ben and myself there for hours after the show to talk and answer questions. If we had stayed with the original plan, we would only have had 20 minutes before being kicked out so the volunteers could clean and prepare for the next day's lineup. As it turned out, there was no time limit for us since we were staying at the hotel. And by the time I headed for my room upstairs at 2 a.m., I was exhausted and supremely happy. My thoughts, with a sleepy smile on my face, I can get used to this. It was a salve to my soul to have such spiritedness turned into an amazing night for Ben, myself, and all the Manos fans who attended. Little did I know that this was only the start of the harassment that I would be subjected to by Joe Warren for the next several years. Around this time, Phil and Joe parted ways after nearly every bridge concerning the sequel had been burned into the river and washed away. Joe took up the slack and began peppering me with emails demanding that I ask permission for anything Manos related that I might be interested in doing. Want to appear at a film fest and talk about my experience? Gotta pay the Warren estate, Joe, a fee. Want to sell Manos-inspired t-shirts? Joe needs his cut. Joe said I had to pay him a licensing fee to sell a photo from the premiere autographed by Dad and me. He expected a percentage of my sales for Manos t-shirts or other related items. He even made comments on my blog warning me not to talk about his dog Peppy and telling me I should be telling his family stories over my own, even though Joe hadn't been born until 6 weeks before the premiere. The strife wore me down. I lost all interest in interacting with fans or participating in Manos-driven projects. The constant needling just took the energy out of what I had always felt about Manos. If it's not fun, it's not worth doing. So I went silent and dark for a time. But the Texas spirit my family imbued me with and the name and fortitude prevailed. I decided that if Joe wanted to pay a lawyer to try and sue me over a few t-shirts and photos, he could go ahead. Regarding my blog post, I told him that I could only write what I knew and he should go write his own blog. He posted publicly on my Facebook page, "We need to talk about this, t-shirts, paintings, etc. I don't want to be the bad guru, but all the characters are copyrighted and as such can't be used without permission either by you or by Solivay. Please contact me, otherwise I have to make my own choices to protect it and all the characters. Ben knows this and has crossed the line, and I don't want you to be put in that position. This is serious and could potentially cost a lot of money if you pursue this without asking and covering your butt." I wasn't his only target. Joe continued to insist that he owned everything Manos, and went after Brian Kosh's play and Rachel Jackson's puppet show. He wanted his cut. But the shows went on without further interruption. It's hard to believe that so much conflict was generated over possession of a film that has been in the public domain for 50 years and that would have evaporated from view without MST3K and the subsequent fervent fan following. I think I get it. Joe wants to be part of this phenomenon that has made his dad posthumously famous in a way he could never have predicted. As I see it, The problem is in his approach. I've always participated simply for the love of Manos. If I make a few bucks off some shirts, okay. If I sell some of my Manos inspired art, great. If I benefit from you reading this book that I've worked so hard on, well, I've earned it. I've been happy with every interaction and opportunity for new experiences that would not have been possible if this film had never existed. My advice to Joe is to focus on sharing his dad's other work. Get the plays, musicals, and the murder mystery published with a copyright, a good co author, and an editor. How about Wild Desert Bikers? Share and profit from it. For one, I would buy and read them, and so would many other Manos aficionados. So, can't we all just get along? Thank you. That was part 2, chapter 11. Whew, we're just about done on this book. I will be back for chapter 12.